All right, let's kickstart the first conversation of the day, and this has to do with the National Pension Scheme, as I mentioned. Hemant Rustagi of Wiseinvest is joining me right now. Hemant, thank you so much for taking the time, and good evening to you. Let's start with the most basic question, which is, what is the National Pension Scheme and what does it set out to achieve?
As far as NPS is concerned, it's basically government-backed scheme. It's a defined contribution scheme as opposed to what defined pension that used to have it earlier. But basically, the purpose is to allow subscriber to build a retirement corpus and also get tax benefits. This is regulated by Pvt.Ltd. So what we have seen over a period of time that it has allowed lakhs of subscribers to build a retirement corpus and get pension. It was basically introduced in 2004 when the government decided to kind of do away with defined pension system. And in 2009, it was thrown open to entire public of the country. So now you can have anyone subscribe into this, obviously within certain rules and framework. So it has kind of emerged as one of the favorite, I would say, investment option for investors to build a retirement corpus over the years.
There is also a bit of nuance associated with how you can run the NPS, and there's a little bit of individuality, Hemant, that you can bring into this NPS investment. We'll get to that in just a bit. But first, what is the Tier 1 account and what is a Tier 2 account?
Yes, Alex, actually there are two types of accounts that you can open. One is a Tier 1 and Tier 2. Tier 1 is the account basically which is the one which you open if you want to build a retirement corpus. That's the account where all the rules and regulations of Pvt.Ltd apply. There's a lock-in period. There are tax benefits of investing in that. And if you look at Tier 2, basically there, it's a voluntary saving scheme. It's different from Tier 1. That is, you can say mandatory, but this is voluntary, which means there is no lock-in period. There are no tax benefits for that. That's something you can utilize for kind of building a corpus for any other purpose, and maybe as additional corpus for building for your retirement. So that's a basic difference, that all the rules of NPS apply to Tier 1 account, and you must have a Tier 1 account to be able to open Tier 2 account.
So that explains what these separate accounts are. Now, there are significant tax advantages to investing in the National Pension Scheme. Before we get into the nitty-gritties of the scheme, let's talk about those first, Hemant. What are they?
Well, Alex, I think one of the major advantages of investing in NPS is the tax benefits that you get. So let's first begin with the tax benefit that you get when you invest the money. So what happens is under Section 80CCE, which is a part of Section 80C, you get tax exemption of investment up to 1,50,000. This is something which is available for NPS subscriber, along with other investment options like PPF, Employees Provident Fund, tuition fee for the children, bank deposit for 5 years. So there are many options which are available under Section 80C. NPS is a part of that. So there is no exclusivity there. There's no additional benefit if you are someone who has already utilized that. So even if you invest in NPS, you will not get the benefit of that. The second is under Section 80CCD 1B. This is exclusive tax benefit for subscribers of NPS of 50,000. This is over and above that 1,50,000 which I mentioned about Section 80C. And then if your employer gives you the NPS facility, so the contribution by the employer to your NPS to the extent of 10% of your salary, which is basic plus DA, is also exempt from tax. So these are three tax benefits that you get while you invest the money in NPS. And at the time of withdrawal, at the time of retirement, you can withdraw 60% of the accumulated corpus, but on the 40%, which is tax-free, on the 40% you buy annuity, but that annuity is taxable. So broadly, these are how the tax benefits are available to the subscribers of NPS.
So the 40%, just to drive home the point, which is taxable, which is the annuity that you buy, you're basically going to be paying income tax on it, correct, over the course of the year?
Oh, absolutely. Like if you have built a corpus till you reach the retirement stage, let's say your corpus is 1 crore, you're allowed to withdraw 60% of that as a lump sum, on which you don't pay any tax. But on the remaining 40%, although you don't pay any tax, but that doesn't come to you. That is invested with the annuity provider, which are the insurance companies authorized by IRDA. You get annuity on a monthly basis. So whatever annuity that you get, you pay income tax at your applicable tax rate at that point in time.
Fantastic. So what are the rules that govern the withdrawal in that? Can you break the NPS earlier than your retirement age? We'll get into the various options for annuity later. But when it comes to withdrawal or breaking of the NPS, what are the options?
Well, yes, you can. I mean, the general perception is that you need to kind of keep your money locked in till you retire. Of course, if you're talking about withdrawal, the withdrawal can happen at 3 different stages. The first stage is when you retire. That's the time, as we discussed, that you can take out your money. The second is there can be a premature withdrawal. Now, this premature withdrawal basically can happen if you completed 5 years and there is no employer and employee relationship. The minimum time period that should have covered is 5 years, and for others, the salaried people, it's 10 years. So there is a possibility that you can withdraw prematurely after completing this time period. But the issue here is that whatever you withdraw as a corpus, 80% of that, whatever you have accumulated, 80% of that mandatorily has to go in for annuity. So what you get in your hand is only 20%. But of course, if the accumulated corpus is less than 2.5 lakh, then you can get 100% as a lump sum. If it is more than 2.5 lakh, even though you're allowed to take out money prematurely, 80% of that will get locked in for annuity and 20% will come in your hand. And the third option is the partial withdrawal. So if you have completed 3 years, you're allowed to withdraw partial amount, which is equivalent to 25% of your own contribution. It's important to understand that 25% of your own contribution, but there are certain conditions. If you fulfill those, then only you're allowed to take out money partially, which could be the education of your children, it could be for their marriage, or for your own skill development if you want to draw the money, or if you want to buy a house for yourself, or if there is a treatment of critical illness. So there are certain conditions based on which you're allowed to kind of take out partially, but these are broadly the rules when you can withdraw money out of NPS.
So I think now we've covered most of the broad rules that govern the running of the National Pension Scheme. But as I mentioned, Hemant, at the start, there is a little bit of individuality that you can bring into your investment into the National Pension Scheme. How would you explain the various options available for how the corpus behaves?
Well, I think there again, Alex, I would say there's a lot of flexibility for the subscriber of NPS to choose what kind of investment they have. Firstly, I think it's important to understand that there are 2 choices that you have as a subscriber. One is the active choice, and the second is the auto choice. Now, in the active choice is when you take a decision. Now, there are 4 different classes where you can invest. One is E, which is equity. Then there is C, which is corporate debt. Then there is G, which is government securities. And there is A, which is alternate assets. Now, there are certain rules or certain caps as to how much can you invest in this. In equity option, you can invest a maximum of 75%. Whereas in the corporate debt and the government securities, you can invest 100%. In alternate asset, because it's considered to be high risk and high reward kind of investment option, there is a cap of 5%. You cannot invest more than 5%. But there are further rules which we need to understand. That the 75% equity is only till the age of 50. Okay, once you cross the age of 50, your contribution to equity reduces by 2.5% every year. And by the time you reach the age of 60, it would be down to 50%. So I think it's important to understand. Now, this obviously is good choice for all those investors who understand what are the risks of investing in equity. They are very clear in terms of what kind of allocation they would like to have, so they can go for active choice. Now, there could be then investors who may find it very difficult to decide that what kind of asset allocation should be there, or they feel that it's too much of a hassle to rebalance the portfolio from time to time. So there is a choice of, like I said, auto choice, where based on you have options to either opt for aggressive life cycle fund, or it could be moderate life cycle, or it could be conservative life cycle. Now, what happens there is till the age of 35, okay, there is a clear mandate as to how much money will be invested in equity and corporate bond and debt. For example, if you opt for aggressive, 75% till the age of 35 will go into equity, 10% will go into corporate debt, and 15% will go into government securities. Similarly, if you opt for moderate, the maximum exposure till the age of 35 to equity will be 50%. And then if you opt for conservative, then the maximum exposure is going to be 25. Now, based on whether you have opted for aggressive, conservative, or moderate, your exposure to equity will come down. For example, in aggressive, it will come down by 4% every year. So by the time you reach the age of 55, okay, it would be down to 15%. And whereas in case of moderate, it would be down to 10%. And then in case of conservative, it will be 5%. So I think it's important to understand that depending on which life cycle you are comfortable with, you can opt. So there is a lot of flexibility, but there is a flaw, I believe that, because when you talk about reducing your exposure to equity after the age of 50, that's your pre-retirement stage. That's the age when you are in the best position to kind of, these are your best year in terms of earnings and savings. And by that time, you can expect a lot of people to kind of have taken care of other investment goals. So you are in a position to kind of increase your allocation to equity. And by that time, you also understand the nuances of investing in equity and what are the risks. But at that point in time, if you reduce the exposure to equity, I think somewhere it makes you with compromise, especially if you're comfortable with equity as an asset class.
Fair point. And I think you've broken it down very nicely for us, Hemant. But when you talk about the active choice, is there an option available to a holder to change their decision midway through?
Oh, yes. Again, there is a lot of flexibility. You can change twice a year. You can change your allocation. You can even change once in a year your, the fund manager. So there is a lot of flexibility in even changing from active to auto, and within active, the allocation that you want to change. There is definitely a flexibility, but I think it's important for every subscriber to understand that this is a facility that you need to kind of use it selectively. Just because you have the flexibility of moving around from equity to corporate to government securities and back to equity, I don't think that's the right approach. Yes, there is a flexibility, but if you make changes quite often, it would amount to kind of trying to time the market, which, as you know, even the best of experts find it very difficult to time it properly. So I would say that subscribers should refrain from that. It's a good thing that you have a facility, but use it very, very selectively.
Quick last questions. What should an individual know about when they're deciding the kind of options available for the pension? There is also, Hemant, an option to extend till 70, right? You can choose to not pull out money till you're 70.
Yes, actually, you can actually extend it till 75. Now, you have an option of either extending that for the lump sum amount or for annuity or for both. You can also decide to kind of take out money, in a phased manner. And at any point in time, if you believe that now is the time that you want to withdraw the lump sum amount, you can actually decide to do that. So again, I think in terms of withdrawal, there is a lot of flexibility there. Obviously, whether you need to kind of go for that option or not will depend upon your personal situation. Okay, so if you have sufficient amount of corpus where income is being taken care of, this is the money that you don't have require fully, you can go for a partial withdrawal and keep some money invested, because over a period of time, we have seen that some of these options have given healthy return, especially for those guys who do not manage their portfolio actively. So if you decide that, if you feel that no, you need to keep this money till a certain period of time, you have the flexibility of doing that. But decision basically will depend upon your own personal situation rather than giving a thumb rule.
The last very quick point, and unfortunately I'm going to have to rush you just a bit, but Hemant, if you compare NPS, and we've broken down all the benefits also, with the other retirement products available, how does it stack up? How does an individual choose whether to deploy or not?
Well, I would say I think there are certain parameters on which NPS definitely scores better than many other options, whether it's tax benefit, but of course that cannot be the reason for investing in that in terms of flexibility. But I think the biggest drawback is that when you compel a subscriber to keep them 40% of the accumulated corpus, if the corpus is above 5 lakh, for annuity. See, what happens is, again, your personal situation would count. Maybe you require that money. I mean, by that time, I think investors would know what to do with their money. And there are so many other options where you can get better return. For example, if you're investing in mutual funds, there is something called systematic withdrawal plan, which is not only tax efficient, but gives you consistent return, higher return. So what happens is that I feel that, somewhere it creates an issue during the retirement stage when 40% of the money I can't touch. And the return that I get through annuity is low, and that also is taxable. So I think that's the biggest drawback of NPS. So I would rather that if by that time you expect that you will become a better investor, then tax benefit alone should not be the only reason for investing in NPS. You need to kind of weigh in, look at other factors, and then make a decision.
I think we've covered all of the bases. Hemant, thank you so much for taking the time. Always a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you.
All right, we have to slip into a very quick break. There's more on the other side, so do stay tuned.